Business Insider tells us U.S. home prices are about to tumble as demand for new houses crater. And Newsweek says homebuilder confidence suffers near record plunge. When will the Daytona Beach housing market crash? Find out on what experts have to say on today's episode of Rockin Real Estate News. Welcome to Rockin Real Estate News. I'm Alice Cooper, and today we're talking about all the scary headlines out there about real estate and whether or not you should believe them. I mean, the news puts it out there, so it must be accurate, right? I hope by now that you figured out that you can't believe everything you hear, and the news media is no exception. I'm blown away by the number of times I read a headline only to dive into that article and find out that the headline is not only misleading, but the information in the article is skewed with over-exaggerations and percentages that are out of context. Unfortunately, the doom and gloom is all around us, and I want to help educate you about what's really going on in the market so you don't have to be afraid of these headlines. When is the Daytona Beach market going to crash? Let me get right to it. It's not going to crash. How am I so confident? I refer to the experts who tell us that there are 4 things that they look at to predict a housing crash. There's unemployment, lending standards, foreclosures, and inventory. So let's dive right in. First, let's talk about the correlation between unemployment and the housing market. To put it simply, when unemployment rises, demand for homes decrease, and inversely, as unemployment falls, you guessed it, more people are in the market for a home, which helps fuel the market. Here in Daytona Beach, we're right at the national average of about 3.4% unemployment. Leading up to the housing crisis in 2008, we saw unemployment at 5%, and then that number nearly doubled by 2009. So in terms of unemployment, we're in much better shape than 15 years ago. Next, we look at the lending standards. As you may know, one of the major contributing factors to the 2008 crash, when so many people lost their homes, was loose lending standards. Just about anyone could get approved for a mortgage 15 years ago, while today's standards are much more strict. Let's take a look at this graph. Here we see the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, which is calculated using several factors related to borrower eligibility, such as credit score, loan type, and loan-to-value ratio. It helps to understand what's going on in the mortgage industry. A decline in credit availability indicates that the lending standards are tightening, whereas an increase in the index shows loosening credit. So here we see a steep incline leading up to the 2008 crash, indicating lending standards were much more lax, and immediately after we see a steep drop, showing that the lending standards have tightened up, and they've pretty much stayed the same ever since. Now let's talk about foreclosures. This is one of the big ones I've seen in the news lately. Headlines like foreclosures soar 100%. Let's take a look at what's really going on. Here we see foreclosure rates in 2005 at the height of the housing crisis, 2.2 million homes in foreclosure. That number today is under 200,000, primarily because people have so much equity in their homes, and going back to what we talked about previously, lending standards are much more strict. So remember, the next time you see a headline that says foreclosures soar 100%, keep in mind that this percentage is taken out of context. If you have one foreclosure on the home and now you have a second one, that's a 100% increase. And finally, let's take a look at inventory. While inventory is starting to increase, it is still historically low, and we're still in a seller's market, and there simply aren't enough homes on the market to cause prices to crash. They would need to have a flood of people getting ready to sell their homes in order to tip the scales towards a buyer market. And that level of activity simply isn't there. Here in Daytona Beach, we're up to about 1,500 active homes, which shows that we're starting to see some normalization in the market, but we still have about 2/3 the number of listings in order to be a balanced market. Bottom line, if you're waiting around for the market to crash, you might be waiting for a while. But if you're ready to move forward with your plans to buy or sell, let us know so we can help navigate today's market. Until next time, rock on, rock stars.